Let's do the news. And there is a lot of news afoot. A lot of news afoot. Yes, the issue with Ukraine is still ticking along. It's still going on. Russia's apparently preparing a major offensive and looking for weaknesses in the Ukrainian lines. Of course, this is culminating into the final struggle, the final battle at Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. All right, so there's that. But there's a bigger issue that is beginning to eclipse this one. And that is the issue with China, specifically speaking, Pelosi going to Taiwan. Now, it is hard to get across the lines that this breaches. You know, at one point, China was basically used as a footstool of the West. I mean, the way they would take, basically, the West took Hong Kong, or the Brits took Hong Kong. And you can imagine what that looks like from a standpoint of national pride and dignity when you basically can't defend your territory. Well, China has a perspective of never again, meaning we will not be a footstool to the West ever again. You can talk to anybody that lives over China or who's been over there. That is part of that culture. So put that to the side for the moment. Before I was born, we had the one China policy, meaning the United States government recognized Beijing as the capital of China as opposed to Taipei. And this goes back to the Second World War, when there was a fight between the communists versus nationalists, etc. Slightly irrelevant for this conversation. But the point that I'm making here is, for the last 50, 60 years, we've accepted the one China policy. And what that basically means is strategic ambiguity. It's like, yes, we're going to support Taiwan. However, Taiwan is part of China. That's the thought process. Taiwan is part of China. And it's strategic ambiguity because you're basically giving them weapons and everything else, despite the fact that you accept that they're part of China. If you remember, when Donald Trump made that phone call to Taipei, people freaked out. Oh my God! I can't believe Donald Trump just did this. He called Taiwan. You're not supposed to do that. One China policy, one China policy. They flipped out. People were freaked out. He wasn't supposed to do that. That's a red line. Now, we've been sending weapons. Apparently, we have military trainers on the ground that has been training the Taiwanese fighters. All of these things are clear provocations. The way we sail our ships in that particular area, all of these things are provocations that China has made clear that it doesn't necessarily like. Add to that, Ukraine. The United States and Western nations have gotten involved in a fool's errand in Ukraine, where they basically provoked a conflict. We're excited to get their opportunity to basically finally get at Russia by using Ukraine as the tip of the spear for that geopolitical gamesmanship, with Zelensky being the useful idiot that was willing to basically take his country into that crisis. There's that. On the ground, they are losing. The economic war, they are losing. They're getting kicked in the teeth. I mean, look at what's taking place in Europe right now. How are you going to keep the lights on, bro? It's that. How are you going to keep the lights on? Factories in various places shutting down. They're trying to enforce a 15% energy cut that in many countries, that's not going to be enough. And there's even a question on whether or not those countries will go along with it in the first place. So there's that. So whereas there's double-digit inflation all throughout Europe, where the price of energy and everything else is skyrocketing, where industries are having difficulty basically continuing. Because understand, when energy costs goes up, everything else goes up. So just the cost of running your machines, the cost of keeping the lights on in the business itself, that stuff translates to the various customers, not to mention the speculation that takes place where people are thinking they can take advantage of the inflation, basically increase their costs in order to get more money. All of that stuff is taking place in Europe. And so it's like your countries are being hit for this fool's errand that you decided to go along with Joe Biden, a man with a 29% approval rating. You followed him into that, or right off the cliff. Meaning, at a time of massive inflation, where Ukraine may be going through hyperinflation at some point, where they are losing 1,000 people a day, where gas costs in this country have skyrocketed, where it is worse in Europe, we are now engaging into a standoff with China. If you thought that you had difficulties in regards to fertilizer and grain and food, etc., with Russia, wait till you get a load of what happens with China. That's the wild part. You've engaged in one conflict that is not going well, decisively not going well, by all accounts, not going well. Why are you doing this? Nancy Pelosi, from the Chinese point of view, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, has said he would militarily defend Taiwan. Okay, so basically fuck the one China policy, right? He said it on 3 times, they had to walk him back. Military trainers in Taiwan, basically teaching those guys fighting and stuff like that. There's that. You have ships that sail in that particular area. There's that. And now you have the 3rd highest representative from the United States government going to Taiwan. Whether it's official visit or not is irrelevant to the point. She's going and she's talking to basically people who want to separate from China. 3rd highest in the U.S. government, 2nd from the president. What is China to think about this? What do they think about this? Now, Joe Biden makes a phone call because Xi Jinping has been flipping out. And they've been making these very clear signals, don't test us. They even made the point of saying, play with fire, you get burned. They even sent out this video right here. This is the Eastern Chinese military. Right here. I don't know if this has sound. Hold on. All right. Basically, it's like their birthday or something on the People's Liberation Army. But look what it says, though, right here. We are ready to bury all enemies. We will bury all enemies. That's what we're doing. We have scuba divers. We got people who can swim in the water for long time periods. That's what we got. We're going to kick ass with China. All right, fair enough. They're putting this out. Basically, they're putting some pretty provocative shit out saying, don't test us. Don't test us. They're being very clear. They're being very, very clear on this point. You can look at Global Times. You can look at China Daily. All of those articles. They're very clear. Don't test us on this. This is a red line. Taiwan independence is a red line. Joe Biden calls Xi Jinping, and they have this kind of marathon phone call. And Xi Jinping basically reads him the riot act and basically makes the same point to him. Don't test us. It has been confirmed that Nancy Pelosi is going to be in Taiwan. And the thought is, apparently the hotel room is booked, that she's going to stay overnight. At least this is what Taiwan press is talking about. And then I believe CNN also confirmed it, that she's going to be there. She's going. So despite all the warnings and everything else, she's going. Now, my first question became, why is Joe Biden allowing this? He's a president of the United States. Foreign policy is literally the purview of the United States. Why is Joe Biden allowing this? And by the way, I came to a conclusion. It's possible that Joe Biden is not just allowing this, he is indirectly sanctioning this. Because I tell you that whether he's indirectly sanctioning it or he's just completely weak, China looks at it as the 3rd person from the president of the United States, or the 2nd person in line from the president, is going to Taiwan and is on some level recognizing Taiwan in this kind of state visit type thing. Taiwan is not a state. Taiwan, by China's definition, is one China. By our own definition, there's only one China. And yet, here we are. Here we are. Biden has the power to cancel Nancy Pelosi's passport. He could do that. He's the president of the United States. If he wanted to do that, he could do that. Now, that is provocative. That is bold. That's very muscular of a thing to do. But think about what we're talking about here. I mean, the president of the United States should be able to tell Nancy Pelosi, cut that shit out. You're going to start a war. Stop. And Nancy Pelosi should say, yes, sir. And if Nancy Pelosi says, well, I'm going anyway. I'm Mama Bear. He says, okay, fair enough. And cancel her passport. That's what should have happened in that process. This is an issue of foreign policy. Your country is already embroiled into a proxy war with Russia and taking bad ends on an economic front because of that war. How are you allowing Mama Bear to go to Taiwan? And you're the president who deals with foreign policy. The reason why I put Nancy Pelosi's face with Xi Jinping's face is because she may as well be the president, right? She's doing foreign policy. If she's going to get us embroiled into a war, the very least that you can say she's doing foreign policy. And by the way, I don't even think she'll get us embroiled into a war with China. The issue is Taiwan, as I keep making the point. I am not worried about Mama Bear's safety. Mama Bear will be perfectly okay. When Mama Bear leaves, Taiwan days are numbered. Their days are numbered. Didn't have to be that way, just like with Ukraine. Didn't have to be that way. But when you have a president who's bellicose constantly. Oh, we're going to militarily defend Taiwan. Militarily defend Taiwan. Did you just say you're going to commit the U.S. military to fight China on behalf of Taiwan, despite the fact that our own doctrine says it's one China? Is that what you just committed to? And then committed to it over and over and over again. What do you think the point of view of China is when it hears that and sees that? They see the U.S. making moves, trying to get Taiwan in the United Nations. What does China think? You are breaching. You are slowly trying to chip away at the one China policy. And like anything else, you're going to get to a point where that wood breaks, it tips over, and shit falls apart. Meaning, whatever reunification process that was going to take place between China and Taiwan over the course of time, who knows? That could have went decades. By being bellicose about it, and by being so provocative that you're basically hitting a red line that you know exists just to show how dominant and manly you are as a nation, you are going to provoke this conflict just like you provoked the previous one. It's always amazing to me how the countries that the U.S. is supposed to be standing behind never fails well in them standing behind them in this case. Ukraine being one, which is being carved up, and we're going to have no idea where Ukraine is after this conflict. And Taiwan. When Nancy Pelosi makes that visit, she leaves from that visit, and Taiwan ass is grass. And the question is going to come in, what is Europe and the United States going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? You're going to get involved into a war with China? Is that what you're going to do? Is that what you're going to do? Or do you just want to get China embroiled into a war with Taiwan? And the rub of all of this is that Europe, and a gang of idiots, will be willing to pass sanctions once again. Think of what that means. Think of what that means. Europe. Do you know how much stuff people get from China? Do you know how much stuff that is? And the catch is, do you really believe that the rest of the world is going to give up all that it gets from China, the development, the money that China puts into those countries, the building that China has been doing in those countries with the Belt and Road that has been basically all over the world? Do you honestly believe that those countries are going to set themselves on fire with the U.S. and with the gang of idiots in Europe and sanction China any more than they were willing to sanction Russia? The U.S. and the West will once again be on their own. There are moments where you hit your head on something. And in those moments where you hit your head on something, you should stop there. You should stop there. The Brits in the Suez Canal, stop there. Okay, this is an overextension of our capabilities. And we're now being punished for it by reality itself because we didn't have the capability in order to exert the power that we tried to exert. Ukraine should have been that issue for the U.S. and the West. The world by itself, if nothing else happened, just keep everything as is. The world by itself had fundamentally changed the moment that the West put those sanctions on Russia and the moment that they provoked Russia to invade. The reason I say that is because from the standpoint of the economies are taking a hit. From the standpoint of the political space is taking a hit. The economies, for the foreseeable future, will be less potent, will be more expensive in order to run, which means more costs for the people who are going to be there, be gas or energy insecure for the foreseeable future. What about the BRIC nations? Not so much. And the BRIC nations are expanding, which means you're getting this kind of secondary world order at the exact same time that Western nations are basically taking a hit politically and economically. That's just with Ukraine. That's just with Ukraine. What happens when you add China to that? What happens when you add China to that? I'm amazed by this story. Just the idea that Pelosi is going to do it and Biden is going to let her. Let's say for the moment that Biden is not letting her do it. Biden wants her to do it. At that point, Biden wants to provoke a conflict with Taiwan. And that's the way China views it. Biden wants to provoke a conflict over Taiwan. And they are trying to make that country to be an independent nation, which is not on our list. Meaning, you've moved up to the point where this is no longer acceptable as a place to go. There's nowhere else to go. Cross that line, you cross that line. So the catch becomes, what does China do? And that's the wild card. Do they take military action where they basically say, Taiwan has moved too far? We're taking Taiwan. Is it that? And if it's not that, is it something else? Meaning, is it sanctions passed against us, the U.S.? Or other countries that basically sanction us, but more so, basically, the U.S.? Is it something more muscular? I mean, China has been putting out signals that seem to be pretty muscular to me on this issue. And again, from their standpoint, where's the red line? And is Pelosi going there, giving it any level of acknowledgement by somebody that high up in state? Is that it? I would say Taiwan's days are numbered. I could be wrong. That's a pretty daunting thing, considering what's going to happen at the point where that becomes the case. But the problem here is that there was no issue between China and Taiwan until the United States starts getting all bellicose about the whole one China policy thing. It starts to consistently chip away at it over and over and over with one action after the next. As I said before, it seemed that Taiwan was going to be used in a similar way as Ukraine. The only difference between those two things is Taiwan is considered part of China, even by U.S. doctrine, whereas Ukraine was basically being a staging ground for neo-Nazis and Russophobes who were running the government, who decided that they wanted to basically kill a bunch of ethnic-speaking Russians. There's that. Mama Bear is going. So right here. China insists that a visit to Taiwan by Pelosi will be a blatant breach of the One China policy governing the territory's status and signaled American support for Taiwanese independence. Chinese President Xi Jinping underlined his position last week during a tense call with Joe Biden. Quote, "Those who play with fire will perish by it," unquote. China's foreign ministry quoted Xi saying, quote, "It is the hope that the U.S. will be clear-eyed about this," unquote. China's defense ministry has warned that, quote, "Chinese military will never sit idly by," unquote, if Pelosi trip goes ahead. Analysts believe Xi wants to show strong repose at any U.S. signal or any signal that the U.S. is moving to support Taiwanese independence, in part because he's seeking a norm-breaking third term in office. Are you people insane? Are you people insane? That's why you guys lose. That's why you guys are getting your economies kicked in the teeth now. It's not about him getting in office for a third term. It's about Taiwan being part of China. Meaning you're writing it as if, oh, he's doing this for the politics of it. It's not the politics of it. Is there a glamour associated with it? Maybe, maybe not. But all things being equal, what's forefront on his mind is that the United States will not carve Taiwan from us in the same way that Hong Kong was carved from us. It's that. There's a historical precedent to it. And you're acting as if this is purely like some kind of Western political drama. It's not that. It's not that. Here's the thing. Whether Joe Biden is sending Nancy Pelosi, which would be astonishing if that's true, is almost secondary to the point that Biden looks unbelievably weak in this situation. Mama Bear is doing foreign policy, something that is the job of the president. The president is sitting back, basically saying, I don't think it's a good idea for her to go. The military, I don't think it's a good idea for her to go. Jake Sullivan, I don't think it's a good idea for her to go. And yet, the president, why don't they think it's a good idea to go? Because it can provoke a conflict. A, you got to protect Nancy Pelosi, but I don't think Pelosi is the issue. B, the issue is Taiwan. You're provoking something that doesn't need to happen. The president of the United States knows this. That's why I say it's possible that Biden is allowing this to take place. All things being equal, whether he's allowing it implicitly or whether he's allowing it just because he's remarkably, incredibly, unimaginably weak, it's almost irrelevant to the point. It's allowing it because he's the president and he has the power to stop it. If he doesn't make an action to stop it, by definition, he's allowing it. And if he's allowing it, the question becomes, why? Do you really want to have this pissing match again? Where it's like, oh, they're not going to invade Ukraine. They're not going to invade Ukraine. Oh my God, they invaded Ukraine. You keep pushing. Why do you keep pushing? In every situation, you push. And then when you get a response back, you're shocked by it all. Oh my God, Russia's declaring an economic war against us. No, you declared an economic war against them. Serenity now. Serenity now, I'm sorry. It's aggravating watching these people act like children and provoking stuff where people die. People die en masse as a result of what these guys are doing. And in this situation, Pelosi doesn't need to go to Taiwan. She's choosing to go to Taiwan. And if she's choosing to go, she is knowingly accepting, I don't believe they're going to do anything. Do you know that? Do you know that? And at the point in which all of you idiots get a lot of people killed because of some kind of military incursion into Taiwan, then what? Then what? Like I said, I don't believe for a moment that the rest of the world is going to come to the West aid on this any more than they did for Russia. China gives too much to the world for that world to bitch at China about whatever China is going to do in this particular situation. it is going to be the United States, and it's going to be the gang of idiots in Europe that once again isolate themselves into this situation. And to have a president that's this remarkably weak, it is astonishing. It's like he has no muscle mass in his body. He's like a jellyfish or something. The idea that you're the president of the United States and you allow Pelosi to basically set foreign policy is appalling on so many levels, especially given the gravity of what could take place. It's very possible that Joe Biden doesn't like the optics of canceling Nancy Pelosi's trip. And if that is true, you are more of an indie idiot than I even thought. There's some things that matter more, such as life. Meaning, I don't give a shit about Nancy Pelosi's ego, nor do I care about how it looks in the context of the result, in real physical matter reality that could take place. This is very aggravating for me, because I honestly don't know what China's response is going to be, nor do they. That response, I don't believe for a moment, is against Nancy Pelosi. But the military and everything else, the escorts, they're basically putting that stuff on what China considers to be its own soil, meaning Taiwan. And yeah, that's going to have consequences. What those consequences are, I have no idea. But if China takes Taiwan, blame Mama Bear. And by the way, it's even talked about in Chinese papers that if they take Taiwan, they're basically going to blame Pelosi for trying to cause independence. How can it be wrong? The politics writes itself, right? Your own policy says it's one China. Why is your head of state, or the third head of state, basically the head of the Congress, coming there in order to talk to independent parties that want to be separate from China? Look, if Xi Jinping went to Puerto Rico and started sending weapons to Puerto Rico, and then started sending heavy delegations to Puerto Rico, and basically going with separatist party members that basically want to be separate from the United States, does the U.S. accept that? And do they accept it gracefully? And the way that they keep saying that Taiwan should accept it gracefully, or China should accept it gracefully. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe. Thanks all. Let's see, I'm not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. Matt, no, Matt, it is not under any circumstances going to be pretty. AJC, seriously, there is not a replacement for Chinese goods anywhere in the world. If China cuts you out, it's a struggle you do not understand unless you domestic. Yes, right there, right there. Because think about all of the projects that China is doing literally all around the world, even at the summit, the America Summit in California. China factored into the summit, meaning they were talking about the way China's ingratiated itself to South America, all of the projects that it was doing and everything else. If you remember, Evo Morales, when they were in office, basically signed a deal where they were going to work to get the lithium out of Bolivia that was going to go to China, but they were going to develop Bolivian industries to do it, meaning, again, win-win process. Same thing in Africa. If you go into Africa, China basically owns it. And I'm not saying own it in that way. I'm just saying the industries and everything else that they basically have been helped building and everything else. They have Chinese casinos in Nairobi. They had like 3 in a small span to get across the idea of the level of influence that China has. I even was reading articles where there was like, America gave over China or gave Africa to China or something like that. And so your catch becomes all of these nations around the world get Chinese goods, for one, but it's utilizing Chinese labor or money in various projects that have helped those countries. Okay. So you get pissed off at China. China invades Taiwan. Do we honestly believe that South America, Africa, or for that matter, the Middle East, again, Saudi Arabia, hundreds of billions of dollars from China, so much so they were talking about using the petro yuan. Like, I'm trying to get across that China has ingratiated itself to all of these countries and created relationships all around the world. And so the cheap products that you get from China, how are you going to get those from China if anything goes wrong in this situation? And not just that, if you're going to pass sanctions on China, what do you think is going to happen to you when you say you can't transport this good or that good, et cetera, et cetera? Do you honestly believe that the rest of the world is going to fall in line? I don't. Do you honestly believe that it's going to be something different than what happened with Russia? Again, I don't. The rest of the world did not fall in line. It was only the West who isolated themselves and has taken the brunt of the damage that's taken place. If you thought the situation with Russia and Ukraine was bad, wait till you see the situation with China and Taiwan and what the Western nations are going to do when they set themselves on fire once again. Look, I do think this is the canary in the coal mine. All things being equal, they are overextending themselves. It is as obvious as daylight, and yet they continue to poke in the direction of conflict. It's as if the conflict that you are currently in is not sufficient for you. You're not sufficiently getting beat yet, where you recognize the world's changed. At some point, they will. It's astonishing that they're going in that route. It's astonishing. That's all. Let's see. Who else? Holly Holm. Okay, JC Tess, right? Without decades of manufacturing and technological investments, the United States economy, maybe the EU's too, would die. Yes, but for whatever reason, they're acting as if hubris alone, we are exceptional. That's what we are. We're exceptional. So despite our economies getting kicked in the teeth, despite Americans paying all that money for food costs and for energy costs, despite Germany not knowing whether it's going to keep the lights on and certain industries shutting down, we can still do this. We're America. We're white and strong. It is our birthright to be able to do this. Yeah, no, it's not magic. It's not magic. Not so much. It is not magic. It's astonishing that this is happening. That's all. Whatever the consequences are, let's just be very clear. There will be consequences for Nancy Pelosi's visit. And those consequences will most likely be visited on Taiwan itself. And then the interesting question becomes, what does the U.S. and Europe do? Here's the thing. Europe is worried that the U.S. will shift its focus from Ukraine to Taiwan. Think about that. Think about that. The United States has dragged Europe into a proxy war. Their economies are getting decimated as a result of that proxy war. The United States, Joe Biden specifically, has been trying to keep them on pace, passing more and more sanctions that hurt Europe far more than they hurt the United States. Pelosi, from the U.S., goes to Taiwan and sparks a conflict with China. And the U.S. immediately says, okay, that's the bigger threat. We got to deal with that. Leaving Europe with a war that it's losing and economies that are being decimated. With the U.S. shifting focus to somewhere else. That's what they're scared of. That's what they're scared of. European leaders are probably going to be silent on this, except for the UK. The UK will be boisterous as usual. The thing is, it was the UK and US intelligence services that basically convinced Europe that the economic war will be able to destroy Russia and that Ukraine probably had a chance of victory. They were wrong on both counts. And yet, like a dog chasing a car, not knowing what to do with it when it gets it, you have the West. Amazing. War on two fronts can't get enough. But think about why would you? It's like rational actor, just rational man, not flamboyantly super intelligent, not that, just rational man that knows logic and math. And you say, hey, rational man, there's a war here. Right here. It's a proxy war. We have provoked that war. That's true. We overthrew that government. Yes, that is. We used Nazis as the tip of the spear for that. Those Nazis got infused into the military, especially after they basically said they were going to join NATO. And on top of that, went on a killing spree with ethnic Russian Ukrainians for the last 8 years. So yeah, we have provoked that. We did that. We thought that the economic war would destroy the Russian economy. It didn't do it. If anything, it destroyed our own economies. Got that, rational man? Yes, rational man gets it. All right. Now, rational man, on top of that, we're thinking about adding another war. Okay? We're thinking about fucking with China in a way that they basically take Taiwan. And then we're probably going to do sanctions and everything else against China too. Rational man asks you, well, wait a minute. Aren't you already getting kicked in the teeth with the sanctions that you first passed against Ukraine? And how is that proxy war going? Are you guys winning in that particular proxy war? Didn't you think you were going to win in that proxy war? And so if you're going and doing that, then what does it mean for this? And how can you really win this if you're starting to devote your attention to that other thing? Rational man. You don't have to be, brilliant. It's just the most basic thing in the world. You are losing global order. You're losing global order. And you're losing it because you couldn't leave it well enough alone. That's what we're talking about. It's fucking aggravating. What is the national debt again? How is this debt being paid for? It's guy. $35 trillion. $35 trillion. And the way that we can pay for this is because we're the reserve currency. The world needs dollars. Hell, if you want to get oil, you need dollars. And so because of that, we get to be pretty liberal about the way we spend money in this country. That's it. That's why. Other countries can't necessarily do that. Other countries can't do that. Michael Williams, JT, those who don't understand white supremacy, all things they do understand only confuse them. Dr. Needy Fuller. Well, here's the thing. You don't even need to think of it as white supremacy, even though it is, but they may not think of it in those terms. What they think of it as, I think, is this kind of subjective shading when you're dealing with certain nations. This notion that we are better. Now, that may be better from the standpoint of what they think their countries are, meaning we're richer, we have more money, and we're more powerful in regards to our military. We are better. We're indispensable. Think about that. Think about that. A nation that calls itself indispensable. All of you other fuckers are dispensable. We're not. We're not. We're crucial to world order. Just the way that we talk about ourselves. And so if you talk about yourself as indispensable nation, if you talk about yourself like that, how are you going to act when you're dealing with other countries? How are you going to act? You're going to act like we're better. And yeah, Western nations at this point have more money, so it ends up being, whiter people who are in that context and have that framing of the world of themselves. I mean, they may even think of, we colonized that place, we took those people as slaves, we're better. I mean, regardless of the liberal values and everything else, when they're in international foreign policy, the whole question is, are you going to back us or not? Are you going to support us or not? Are you going to allow us to put in military bases or not? Are you going to allow us to get into your economies or not? And if the answer is no, we prefer sphere of influence, then you're an enemy, you're a threat. That's straightforward. And our job at that point is to undermine, to back political parties that will be in our interests, and if necessary, overthrow your government to get those political parties in office. When you look at the world in those terms, anything that is going to be a hedge or a block against your ability to control is going to be a target. Western nations in this particular situation, though, have hit their head on something, and they fucked up. They fucked up. And yeah, whether it's white supremacy, whether it's hubris, whether it's some kind of nationalistic idea that you're better because you're in one particular country or another, I don't know exactly what it is. But it does feel like, God damn it, I'm white and we can do this. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. God damn it, we're white. We can pull this off. I know we can do it. No, we can do it. Either way, this is fucking horrendous. Any way you cut it. And no, I don't think Donald Trump will make the situation better. Yes, maybe Donald Trump kept us out of going into Ukraine. Who knows? That's speculation at this point. Never happened, so we don't know. All I'm saying is the economic war is not going well. This is not shock and awe. This is something else. Or maybe it is shock and awe, because shock and awe ended up being a dumpster fire. And they're losing the war. You're attacking your domestic economies in a war that you are fundamentally losing in a proxy. And you're still dedicating money and energy to this particular pursuit. Your countries are losing a vital energy resource that allowed your economies to tick along and to be profitable because you were able to get that energy source at a really good price. You were willing to give all of that up for what? When Russia came to you and asked you, we are looking for a security architecture of Europe. You're surrounding us. We don't feel safe. You've just knocked over the government of Ukraine and put in a Russophobic government. Those people have been killing Eastern-speaking Russian Ukrainians. We don't like this. This seems unsafe to us. This seems unsafe. We need to come to a security architecture. And what did they tell Russia? Kick rocks. Kick rocks. How dare you come to us and ask us for anything? If anything needs to be asked, it'll be us asking you. And in which case, they didn't want to hear it. Nobody wanted to hear it. But understand, they didn't want to hear it in the context of continuously pushing. Like, this wasn't the world is static and Russia's acts. It wasn't that. It was you literally knocked over a government on our border and put in your guy in that government, put in multiple people that you wanted in that particular government. And then when the other ethnic Russian Ukrainians basically said, we don't want to be a part of a Russophobic government because, we're ethnic Russian Ukrainians. At that point, the government goes on a killing spree. We signed an agreement over this, and none of you enforced it. So yeah, we're invading. And we're going to solve this issue militarily on the ground. And we're going to carve up Ukraine to the point where we feel safe. And if they keep fucking with us, we will go further. And from the standpoint of the West, okay, you need a vital energy source to keep your economies going. What happens when you don't get that vital energy resource? Turn that down to 20%. Let you rest on that for a bit. Fucking rest, it'll go to zero. It was that. But the weird part is, none of them ever thought that that would happen. It was if the European leaders thought to themselves, Russia is always going to sell us gas regardless of what we do to them. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? It's a war. Your money matters less in a war. Commodities matter more. What I mean by that is if you're in a war, I need to get gas, I need to get food, I need to get canned goods, supplies, equipment, I need all that stuff. But those are things. That's not cash. Those are things. And if I can take something in order to use it for the war effort, I do that. Because the money matters less than having those things in order to operate. I'm saying that the European economies acted as if the money mattered so much more than the real thing, which is the commodity. And at the point where they say, okay, well, fair enough. We're not going to give you this commodity. Now they scream, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that. I can't believe you're doing that. You're fucking killing our soldiers. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And on top of that, you kept encroaching on our territory. It's just astonishing in the way that these guys act. It's profound. But due to the commodities Russia provides, the economy importance is closer to that of Japan. See, I don't know anything about the economy of Japan, so I'm just going to have to take your word for it. HAC. How will you pay for it? Gotta pay for our values. Gotta pay for our values. To make people fearful of government spending. Henry Gustav. Well, that was Reagan's thing, right? Strangle the economy in the bathtub or something like that. Basically, you run up the debt so much that people can't get basic services and stuff. But think of how ridiculous that is, or how callous that is. So you want to run up the debt by buying shit that we don't need, as opposed to running up the debt by shit that we do need. Meaning you can run up the debt any way you want. Why not run it up in a way that says, okay, this person's going to have healthcare. We're going to have great roads. We're going to have awesome subway and train systems or high-speed rail. We're going to have all of this stuff as an advanced society. You could also do it that way. Meaning we're $35 trillion in debt. And can any of you really honestly figure out where was the money spent? If you go anywhere around the world, you see high-speed trains, you'll be like, oh my God, we don't have those in the United States. You see these windmills, oh my God, we don't really have those in the US. I'm pretty sure they may have somewhere, but not like talking about. You see clean subways, oh my God, we don't have that in the United States. They have a healthcare system, oh my God, you don't have that in the United States. And $35 trillion in debt. So it's like, what did you spend the money on if you didn't get all of those things? Think of the advanced society that your country should have if it spent $35 trillion on something that was actually worthwhile. Think about what you could have. And think about what you ended up with. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe.